Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 at Broadcasting Scotland. And this evening I am joined by Ruth Watson. And how are you doing this evening, Ruth?
I'm doing okay, just feeling fair scunnered with it all now, but I was happier yesterday when the sun was shining, but it's raining the day is plittering down, so I'm not so happy.
I know. I know the feeling. That's why I'm in the house tonight rather than at home, because when I seen the state of the roads down our way, I was like, no, not driving to studio, staying at home. Right, this evening we'll start with, as usual, the coronavirus update. Okay, so as of 2 p.m. today, a total of 1,663,885 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and the UK government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 1,465,046 were confirmed negative. 198,839 have tested positive, and there are 655 new confirmed cases of COVID-19. This will be an underestimate of the numbers of cases. Not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. There were 56 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus COVID-19 infection now stands at 7,006 people. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 1,076 were in hospital last night, 93 of whom were intensive care. As of 8 a.m. today, 1,465,241 people have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 43,203 people have received their second dosage. The latest UK daily figures published today show that 121,305 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 548 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals. And once again, everyone at Broadcasting Scotland here, our condolences go out to all the family and friends. Now for the ONS update. In England, infections, hospitalisations, deaths started increasing in December in 2020. The infection rate and hospital admission rate have decreased in recent weeks. Positivity rates for cases compatible with the new UK variant decreased or levelled off in England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. The number of deaths involving the coronavirus COVID-19 decreased in the latest week in England and Wales, but the total number of deaths from all causes remains above the 5-year average despite recent increases. Increases, most people do not have the antibodies to COVID-19. This suggests most of the population remains vulnerable to infection. The number of deaths registered in England and Wales in the week ending the 12th of February 2021 was 15,354, over a third, which is 5,691. Of these deaths mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate, a decrease from the previous week. However, total number of deaths registered was at 28.8% higher than the 5-year average. Now, if you would like to join tonight's conversation, all you have to do so is go on Twitter and follow us at Broadcast Scot and use the hashtag Scotland at 7. So Scotland 87. So now we're going on to our first story of the evening, the gradual easing lockdown restrictions. Scotland's phased and careful approach to the easing of lockdown restrictions while continuing to suppress coronavirus, COVID-19, has been outlined by the First Minister. The updated strategic framework sets out 6 tools the Scottish Government will use to restore, on a phased basis, greater normality to our everyday lives. The immediate priority will continue to be phased return of education, building on the return of some pupils to school yesterday, on the basis that progress suppressing the virus and vaccinating key groups remains on track. Restrictions would be eased in the following order. The next phase of school returns with the rest of primary school years, primary 4 to primary 7, and more senior phase secondary pupils back in the classroom for part of their learning, and the limit on outdoor mixing between households increasing to 4 people from a maximum of 2 households. The stay-at-home restriction to be lifted and any final school returns to take place, communal worship to restart in limited numbers, mindful of the timing of major religious festivals. This phase would also see the reopening of retail, starting with an extension of the definition of essential retail and the removal of restrictions on click and collect. Return to a level approach with all Scotland moving to at least level 3 with some possible adjustments. This could mean that from last week of April that we would expect to see phased but significant reopening of the economy, including non-essential retail, hospitality and services like gyms and hairdressers. There is likely to be a gap of at least 3 weeks between each easing of restrictions to assess the impact of changes and to check that it is safe to proceed further using 6 conditions for safe easing set out by the World Health Organization. As the vaccination programme progresses, a return to more variable levels of restrictions, which can vary by location, is likely when it is safe to do so. Ongoing financial support is set out in the framework and will continue to be available to businesses as we emerge from lockdown. This includes the ongoing commitment to fund Strategic Framework Business Fund and to provide level 4 payments for additional months once businesses are moved down a level. These proposals are contingent on the receipt of additional consequentials from the UK government. Now, Ruth, I know we've had such a miserable day today compared to yesterday and Sunday, but there seems to be a wee bit of sunshine in this in regards to the restrictions being eased off. How are you feeling about these easing off? Do you think it's too soon, or do you think we're going about it the right way?
Well, I think that the government, the First Minister, seems to be adopting a data-driven, scientifically guided approach. It seems to be sensible, while frustrating. It seems to be sensible. So I was impressed by the fact that every stage of the easing out of lockdown will be given a 3-week period before the next stage is considered, so that people can see if it's working or not, or for the new Kent COVID variant is with its higher infectivity is making inroads again. So that seems really sensible. One of the things that really concerns me is on the other side of the border, you've got Mr. Johnson and his cohorts talking about people booking holidays, we're opening, we're never going back to closing down again. And yet the infectivity rate, the rate of people being infected and the death rate is still higher than when we were going into lockdown this time last year. So I am just horrified at the prospect of everybody sitting in their houses for all this time, missing out on all the lives. Looking at all these wee kids that, their entire life has been a series of lockdowns or sort of missing out on normal childhood. And we're going to go through all of this. And yet, come March or April, we're going to have fleets of folk coming up in their camper vans and laughing at a wee Scotch for being so cautious. So I really hope that there's some serious border closing and quarantining going to be happening, because I don't want us to go through all of this just for there to be another wave of infection. I remember a few weeks ago, Jason Leach saying that the majority of infections, and he's modified this comment slightly since, I don't know if he got tell off for it or not by to mind his diplomacy, but I watched the briefings frequently, and he said that they could tell by the genomic sequencing that the majority of infections coming back into Scotland after the holidays, after the summer, had been people going on their holidays, and predominantly people coming up from down south. So I think that in order to control the rate of infection, we have to control our borders. We have to do what New Zealand has done. We have to do what Australia is doing. I mean, it's in Australia, Western Australia, part of the Australian continent and part of the Australian nation, has closed its borders. They had 5 cases, and the whole state went into lockdown against the rest of Australia. So I think that I think it's really important that we try and consider our options to keep the success of the rate of deaths and misery that you can call success, to keep the progress we're making. It just breaks my heart. And my son's desperate to get back to the gyms. He's desperate to go back. His first year at university is basically being spent in his bedroom here at home. My youngest daughter, she just got back to school for one day yesterday. She's not seen any other teenagers for months. It's I don't want us to do all this and go through all this heartache just for it to be set back because it's a load of neoliberalist Tories down in Westminster demanding that Mr. Johnson opens up again.
I mean, that's the thing, as a mum, I can see exactly where you're coming from. And when you see Germany and Austria, they've managed to close the border and restrict people from going back and forth. I mean, do you think I'm going to ask the most obvious question, we all probably know the answer. Do you think it's actually possible of Scotland being able to go that far and close the border with England? Because we are going to get an influx coming up from England. That's what happened last year, just as we were getting it under control in Scotland. We ended up with an influx of holidaymakers, and our rate started rising again. So do you think it is practical?
In fairness, quite a lot of the infection that came into Scotland was also from our own homegrown idiots going off on holiday.
Yes,
I mean, I understand that folk want to go on holiday, but you know what? Actually, I don't want to go on holiday. I want to be able to... So I suspect, as is often the case with a cautious government, I suspect that what they are looking for is for the public to tell them. The reason that Scotland is doing well with the adhering to the restrictions, from what I understand, is that compliance is good because people trust that we're all in it together and we're doing it for the common weal. And I think that there may well come a point. I noticed last week that John Swinney said he wasn't ruling out shutting the border. They did it with foot and mouth. They can do it for cows. Why not do it for people? So I think that it may come down to, if the Scottish government is seen to be responding to public demand, then they are more likely to do it. Because if you have the public on your side, it is more likely that something will happen. So perhaps everybody in Scotland needs to start writing to their politicians and writing to the newspapers and making it clear that we would like to see. It's not a question of shutting the border and doing a Donald Trump and building a wall. It's a question of essential travel only. And if you're going to come into the country, then you have to quarantine. And I'm very concerned about those people who are coming in from overseas and they're going via the Midlands, or coming into England and driving north. I think that it's a really serious issue, and it's one thing to have essential travel, lorry drivers bringing food to and fro, travel like that, but gadgets getting in their camper vans and coming up to do a North Coast 500, it's just not happening.
I think you must have seen my post earlier on Facebook, because I was saying I would like to do the North Coast 500 again. It's a great route. It's fantastic. No, one of the things that I had seen earlier on, or just after Nicola Sturgeon's announcement, and I thought it was quite sensible sitting there listening to it. I thought it was quite sensible, a sensible approach. But a fellow business owner turned round and complained that there wasn't any definite dates the way England has given, Boris Johnson. What I know what my opinion in that would be, but what would you say to that? Do you think Nicola is being on the right side of caution, or do you think Boris Johnson?
You know, and I follow a lot of, as you might imagine, I follow a lot of sort of food and drink businesses on social media, and it's a conversation that was being held yesterday on social media. Was, you know, you do know that we have to have 2 or 3 weeks to be able to arrange procurement for food and staffing, and you know we need to have this notice. And I think that within the framework that was laid out today, it is implicit that that will be given, that, you know, it's not just going to be, okay, well, fine, guys, tomorrow you can open up. But I think that if you're going to tell somebody, yeah, for sure, definite, it's all going to be fine and dandy, we're going to open up and never close down again, when you know that that's a lie. I mean, I just think the problem is that you have somebody like Mr. Johnson treating a nation with promises and assurances. And I think we all just feel like one of his ex-wives right now, you know, just like sort of somebody who's been given promises to, and yet, you know, you're going to be let down sometime really soon.
Isn't it like an ex-wife? It's like false promises and false hope, and I know exactly what side I'm on. I mean, I would rather proceed on the side of caution. Right, now on to the next story of the evening, labour market statistics update. Commencing on the latest official labour market statistics from the Labour Force Survey published by ONS today, Minister for Business, Fair Work and Skills, Jamie Hepburn, said, for October to December 2020, Scotland's employment rate estimate fell over the quarter to 73.7%, and the unemployment rate estimate also fell slightly over the quarter to 4.5%. Separate HMRC early estimates for January 2021, also published this morning, show they were 2,331,000. I'm sorry. 331,000, sorry, my apologies, just kind of had to double check the reading of that. Payrolled employees in Scotland increasing by 8,000 compared with December 2020. However, this is 68,000 lower than a year ago. These figures reflect some of the challenges faced in the labour market to date, but do not reflect the full impact of coronavirus COVID-19 or the outlook for employment. The job retention scheme continues to play an important role in supporting employers and employees, and combined with huge economic uncertainty caused by Brexit, this remains an extremely uncertain time for the economy and jobs. We have repeatedly called on the UK government to extend the job retention scheme for as long as it's required, which will be beyond the current end date of April. Commenting as ONS figures show UK employment has risen to 5.1%. SNP Shadow Chancellor Alison Thewes MP said, with the UK unemployment rising, the Chancellor must rule out a return to Tory austerity cuts and use the budget to deliver major investment to protect jobs and kickstart the recovery. The Tories must not pull the rug out from underneath the economy by withdrawing support prematurely or imposing cuts. And when we need maximum investment, we cannot afford to repeat of the Thatcher years when the Tories left millions of people on the scrap heap. Right, Ruth, that's quite interesting on the labour market statistics update. I mean, I know even just talking to people on the ground, people that are working and things, people, no matter, even with the furlough scheme, they are very much scared of what's coming round the corner, when it's up at an end. Do you see the Tory government offer more support for businesses and those seeking work, or do you think they are literally going to pull the rug from underneath everyone's feet come April?
I don't know. It's a very interesting question because there is an element of survival in there. I mean, Rishi Sunak said, no way, you're not going to make me. I won't, will no. And then he did. So I wonder, because you've got, I think one of the reasons why they want to open the pubs, let's get the pubs open for Easter, because, Christmas wasn't a disaster enough for us in terms of infection rates. And you just have to look at who their friends are. Look at who the Tory supporters are. Looking at the Weatherspoons Empire and others. And it does make me wonder. I suspect that they might actually continue with it out of self-preservation, because their base is not guaranteed. Some people may be Tory to bankruptcy, but many more are vote Tory or support the Tories because they're a party of aspirations. And it may well be that Rishi Sunak decides that he has to, because if he doesn't, he may be faced with social unrest or civil unrest. Now, of course, I noticed that there was a Yale professor who recently said, or just a couple of days ago, said that many of the Conservative Party laws that were being passed or put to Parliament had the smack of fascism around them. So it may be that they're trying to shore up the legal ways in which they can control people before there's still emergency Brexit legislation they could bring into play, for example. But I suspect that they are seriously concerned that there may be civil unrest if they don't, because there's only so far that you can push people, and we see it time and time again. If they can't eat, if they can't provide for themselves, if they can't provide for their families, if they have no hope and nothing left to lose, they begin to behave in ways that are, from Rishi Sunak's point of view, definitely suboptimal. So I think that we might be surprised. I don't think that they would be doing it out of any sense of social justice. I think they would be doing it out of a sense of self-preservation, because this red wall that collapsed to become Tory, there's a lot of votes there that have only been lent to them, and you're already looking at they're already juggling with the impact of Brexit. I think that this is going to prove an extremely difficult time for Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting sitting seeing what's going to happen. I wish I could give my opinion on this right now, but never mind, we'll move on to the next story. School leaver attainment and destinations. 93.3% of pupils had a positive destination, including work, training or further study, within 3 months of leaving school last year, official statistics show. The proportion of school leavers in higher or further education is at a record high, with 72.2% continuing in education in 2019 to 2020, up from 67.6% in 2018 to 2019. The statistics highlight the impact of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, with the fall in positive designations from 95% last year, mostly driven by a decrease in leavers going into work. Figures also show that for national qualifications, the proportion of school leavers with one pass or more at SCQF level 5, example National 5, or better, 85.7%. In 2009 to 2010, the proportion was 77.1%. The proportion of school leavers with one pass or more at SCQF level 6, example a higher or better, is 63.9%. In 2009 to 2010, the proportion was 50.4%. And that's good news, because at the end of the day, it shows that the grades are getting better, the kids are doing really well. And even though I no longer understand those qualifications, because I'm from the standard grade O grade system, and so I'm kind of reading that going, what does that stand for? So I'll need to go and look up what SCQF, unless Linda shouts at me what it stands for, because I'm old school. But anyway, this is going to be quite difficult for the school leavers this year, especially with businesses recovering from COVID, especially those going into maybe apprenticeships and going on to work. How do you think we're going to be able to, do you think we are going to be able to support the young ones leaving this year, leaving school, or is it going to be a hard one?
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? I mean, I guess the thing is that people will get by. You know, it may be a bit really rubbish socially, and it may be really rubbish for our mental health, but we will come out of it. You know, history shows we have come out of this. You know, the bubonic plague. You know what I mean? It's the we come out of these things, and life moves on. You know, however, it is the resilience that is within our communities, and I think that's one of the things that worries me. Is that in previous pandemics, the Spanish flu and other pandemics that have happened in the past, communities have had more cohesion, perhaps. And families perhaps have been more around each other, and it is the isolation that people are coming across that I think is a real issue. So I think that we will come through this. I hope that our country will make choices which give people cause for more optimism and hope, which will, I think, give us sort of jet fuel, because we will have opportunities that will be denied us otherwise going forward. But today, for example, in my wee town, which has a lovely wee community in it, so we're not doing too badly in terms of social isolation here. There was somebody advertising for an apprentice they were needing for a joinery company. One of my daughter's friends, she's leaving school at the age of just when she turns 16, so that she can go to college to study to be an apprentice for a hairdressers. And I mean, life is going on. It is for folk who are looking to go to university. In some ways, I think the vocational, I have no evidence for this, but other than anecdotal, but in some ways, I think the vocational courses and the vocational work perhaps will be better for some, give more certainty perhaps, because people's boilers still break down, people's kludgies still need fixed. It is the universities that are sort of delaying for another year, and that leaves people in limbo, or for people who are in the middle of studying, it's a really tough one to go on. You know, if you've got a debt hanging over you, you're halfway through a study and you've been told you've got to wait another year. Is that another year of fees you need to pay? Are you going to get this year's back? You know, that's tough. That really worries me. And I think it is that uncertainty for folk who are suffering from extreme social isolation. You know, if you're living on your own in a flat and you can't, you know, your dating years are passing you by, or you haven't had any human contact, you've not had a hug, you know, you've not, one of the most important things that we can have as primates, as people, is the human touch. Just somebody touching the back of your hand, or somebody smiling at you when they hand you your coffee in the morning, you know, things like this. It's really fundamentally important. And I think that there will be opportunities going forward, but actually it's the social resilience that we really need to have a think about.
Definitely. And the thing is, and what the young ones need to remember, is this is not going to last forever. We will get through this and they will be fine. And, you know, and it's just keeping sensible at the moment. But I do know there's lots of online dating sites that I've set up, Ruth, for those that are still of dating age. There's quite a few out there, so maybe if
I bow
anybody's
to your greater knowledge.
go check them out. There's a few out there. So anyway, it saves you the price of a cup of coffee as well. Right, on to the next story. Universal credit. Claimants double to 6 million since the pandemic. After new figures revealed that 6 million people are now claiming universal credit, a 98% increase, which is a 3 million increase since the pandemic began. The SNP has said it is vital that Rishi Sunak uses the up-and-coming budget to extend coronavirus support and strengthen the social security safety net. UK government statistics show that 4.5 million claims were made between the 13th of March 2020 and the 14th of January 2021. Of these claims, 2.4 million claimants started between March 13th and 14th of May 2020. The SNP's Work and Pension spokesperson has demanded that the Chancellor urgently acts to prevent millions being left behind, including by extending furlough, delivering coronavirus support to 3 million excluded, making the universal credit uplift permanent and extending it to legacy benefits. Once again, we seem to be on a wee kind of theme here tonight, Ruth, about support and people struggling and dealing with the ongoing effects of coronavirus, and and to see that the increase of people now claiming universal credit is actually terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And regarding the universal uplift payment, that really does need to be extended, and it really does need to be extended to the legacy benefits as well. What's your take on all this, Ruth?
Just give people the chance to eat with dignity. I am so heartsick for people who are falling between the cracks. It's bad enough to have to apply for universal credit. If you're somebody who has worked all your life and you've done all the things that you've been told are right, to you'll be okay if you do this, this and this, and then suddenly along comes this and you get knocked off your feet. And then you get sucked into this really punitive and as the United Nations Rapporteur on Poverty pointed out, a sort of intentionally punitive and cruel system. The only hope I have is that people who are actually going through that for the first time, who perhaps thought that through some virtue they were never going to have to experience such a thing, perhaps this will mean that we see some kind of a resurgence in an understanding and a sentiment for the common weal and supporting people. Perhaps people will understand that poverty and the loss of work can hit anybody for whether through ill health or bad luck. I know people who are really struggling because they don't qualify. They don't qualify for benefits. Perhaps they've got a property elsewhere, or perhaps they have savings that are they're expected to dip into, regardless of whether they have reasons for having those savings. Perhaps they're saving for a house, or perhaps they're saving for their children's education. I guess you could argue that why, if somebody has savings, they should use those, and why not? But I do know of people who are accessing the local food bank. They've got extremely fancy cars in their driveways, but they have no money. And I suspect they don't probably own those cars either. They may be on the Never Never or a lease hire or something. And it's things like that. People who have worked for years to build up businesses and are employers, and quite the kind of network that we use to keep a society going, and I guess a capitalist society going, are being severely tested and strained. And I saw somebody the other day saying, capitalism isn't really all that great if it needs to be bailed out by socialism every few years. And I think that there's probably a lot in that. When I lived in Asia, there was no social security. It was a truly ghastly and horrific place if you were poor or became unwell. But what they did have was a huge and very unwieldy civil service, and lots of sort of state businesses that were huge and unwieldy. But the reason they were huge and unwieldy was because they employed people. They found jobs for people. There were lots of jobs. They may not have been particularly well paid jobs, but they were jobs so people could access a living with dignity. And it definitely got me thinking, is this the reason why, maybe there's a happy medium to be found within society? I really like the work that Leslie Riddick's been doing on the universal basic income, because I do think that perhaps rather than having huge, unwieldy and meaningless jobs for people to do, we could have a universal basic income so that people could be creative and develop ideas and create new businesses, and have the time and the money for a 4-day week, the time and the money to go out and keep an economy going that doesn't have to be buying stuff. Perhaps we all could just go out and whittle spoons or whatever interests us. And I just think that that the horror that we are going through perhaps will show us the meaninglessness of the daily existence many of us go through to earn money on it. Why we're like hamsters on a wheel. For what? I was horrified when I saw the last time lockdown, we were coming out of lockdown last year, and Rishi Sunak was saying, we're a consumer economy, we need to consume to make the economy go. And I'm like, yeah, but what about the climate emergency? And where's the happiness and stuff? Isn't that what's going wrong? Is that we're being told that stuff matters rather than time with the people we care about matter? I mean, surely lockdown is proving to us that it's not stuff that matters, but it's spending time with the people we love, or making new connections so we can find new people to love.
Exactly. And the thing is, I know in my community, people have been coming together, which is lovely. And, not many, everybody's helping each other out. And that's just lovely. And it's really nice to see communities coming together. And it would be a shame to go back to this normality, and people go back into the rat race again, and to lose that. And it's lovely. It's been really nice. And the other thing is, as well, in my community, there's been a lot of people suffering, as you say, like paying bills and things. And one of the swapsies, we will swap products and things, and it's sometimes quite creative in what you can do, and it's a really good.
Don't let the Inland Revenue hear you say that; they'll come and they'll have you.
It's impersonally quite good, because there's ways people can do it, and it's nice to see communities helping each other out and supporting each other. So if we can take anything, we can take that. Now, to move on to the next story, I could talk about that other one for ages, but we'll move on to the next story now. Data points to record outflow of foreign workers from the UK in 2020. Almost 1 million people born outside the UK may have left in the last year, as the coronavirus pandemic appears to have triggered the biggest net outflow of foreign-born workers on record, according to the official data released today. Figures from the Office of National Statistics suggested there were 795,000 fewer foreign-born workers in the UK in the final 3 months of 2020 than a year earlier, and nearly a million fewer foreign-born residents aged over 16. The UK has suffered Europe's highest death toll from coronavirus and the biggest economic hit of any major economy. Some sectors which previously employed large numbers of foreign workers, such as hospitality, have been especially hit hard. Workers born in the EU accounted for the majority of departures in the past year in the ONS figures. Ruth, again, this is, COVID, how it's hitting the industries, especially hospitality.
No. I can't believe they're trying to blame COVID for that. It's not COVID. It's Brexit. It's amazing. Suddenly, COVID's affecting all the lorries that can't go out with all their loads.
COVID's affecting all these.
COVID's to blame. No. This is pure and simple Brexit. The only way in which COVID might be to any way affecting this is people who have got an option to leave Plague Island are going.
Exactly.
Because I'm not taking that. It just, honestly, it is just.
It's Plague Island, exactly. Plague Island, but it's great how COVID gets the blame of everything, and it seems to be. Even with anything to do with food supplies and things will be COVID instead of Brexit.
Everything's COVID. No. Take ownership. Those lying Brexiting nonsense that we've been fed, the mendacity and duplicity. And no, the Brexiters have to take ownership. Now, I'm sure that many of them in their poisoned little hearts are thinking that it's fine to see foreign-born people leaving. I think that is one of the greatest shames in our society.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Definitely. And the thing is we've lost so many wonderful people who have made their homes here, and they have
Yeah, and
left
so
because
many
of
of
these
them,
Brexiteers.
who are still hanging on in there in the hope that Scotland makes different choices, it makes life easier for them, is they are being made to
Yeah.
go through 7 shades of hell in order to prove their right to stay here. And it is
I know.
criminal. It is criminal. It is cruel, and it is wrong. And they are those people who have brought this to our heads are compounding it with lies. And if they think we're stupid enough to take it, and I'm devastated to see how Mr. Johnson's popularity seems to be rising. So there are people out there who are either so racist or so stupid that they're prepared to go with it and think that he's doing a fine job. But quite frankly, if people can't see it for what it is, really, heaven help us. I understand that we have got a complicit media. As a former journalist, as a former lecturer in journalism, I cannot begin to tell you how horrific it is to watch the editorial choices that are being made. For Kay Burley to be the only person who is harassing Matt Hancock for a period of time. How is it Matt Hancock and his ministerial wrongdoings, how is it that
I
that
know.
isn't headline news every step of the way? Scotland bought a baby box, and that was headline news for months. Mr. Hancock breaks the law, yet another minister breaking the law. How many ministers need to break? I mean, is that a prerequisite now to be in government in Westminster? It is scandalous. And so for all these people who clutch their petticoats and disappear down various rabbit holes, how about you stick your head up out of the sand and have a look around you and think, could Scotland perhaps be doing a better job of all of this? There's loads of stuff going on in the world at the moment, and there's loads of stuff going on in Scottish politics that make me shake my head in despair. But quite frankly, the thought that any one of my neighbours might be forced from their homes because a load of far-right racists decided that that was going to be okay. And we're in a situation where you've got folk going full Hillary Clinton, oh, her emails. Don't give me 4 years of Trump or another 40 years of the Tories, because folk are getting squeamish. Let's get our house in order. We'll get the keys to the house, and then we'll get our house in order, and we'll do a fine job of it. But I am absolutely furious at the fact that people can't see how far they're being spun.
I know. Right, now to the next story. Vincent Muscat pleads guilty to Daphne Caruana Galizia assassination. Oh, sorry, Alowana. One of the three men accused of the 2000 assassination of the Maltese anti-corruption journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia has pleaded guilty, a major development in a case that has rocked the Mediterranean island nation. Vincent Muscat was arrested in December 2017, 2 months after the car bomb attack that set off a chain of events that led to the resignation of Joseph Muscat, no relation, as Prime Minister. Vincent Muscat and the brothers George and Alfred Giorgio, all in their 50s, were awaiting trial accused of procuring, planting and detonating the bomb that killed the journalist on the 16th of October 2017. In a dramatic pre-trial hearing on Tuesday afternoon, Muscat's lawyer, Mark Sant, informed the court that his client wanted to register an admission, and when asked how he wanted to plead, Muscat replied guilty. The judge, Edwina Grimia, told Muscat's lawyer that these are grave accusations of murder and conspiracy, and that he could be facing a life sentence. Muscat repeated that he pleaded guilty. Businessman Jürgen Finish is awaiting trial for being the mastermind behind the murder plot and the owner of the Dubai registered company. 17 Black at the centre of Daphne Caruana Galizia corruption investigation. Finishi was arrested in November 2019 as he was sailing away from Malta on his yacht. We know that Daphne was known for investigating corruption, including contributing to the 2016 Panama Papers data leak. Do you, and obviously she was exposing cronyism and sleaze within the country's political and business elite. I mean, these men have been accused. Yes, Muscat has pleaded guilty. Do you think his sentence is going to be fitting for the crime? And what about the other ones? The other two men, do you think they're going to be,
Well, I
thingies,
think that
you know,
Muscat pled guilty and got what I understand is a reduced sentence because he said that he would give them information. Well, or is I don't know. I thought he was getting 15 years for it, Linda. I'm sorry, somebody's speaking in my ear. Um, I understand that he has been sentenced, but I was reading the Maltese news before I came on, and I'm not entirely au fait with all the details on it, but I understand that he got 15 years. And he did so on the basis that he was going to be an informant. Now, given how far up the chain politically this goes, in 2015, in fact, recently, I think he was offered a pardon for the murder of Carmel Cheerkop, or his alleged involvement with the murder of a lawyer, Carmel Cheerkop, in 2015. And for Maltese listeners, I apologise for the mispronunciation I'm sure I put in with that. So he's been involved with a number of really dodgy deals. He was hired as a hitman. It is thought that this goes right the way through the political sort of leadership within Malta, and the there's a whole sort of scandal with sort of passports for sale, and there's loads going on with it, which has been keeping the Maltese. I've got friends in Malta who just are fascinated and horrified in equal measure by what's been going on in their country. I don't know if he will live to see that, because I suspect that somebody, unless they're really careful with the prison guards, I suspect that somebody who's in a country that has got this much political intrigue and corruption going on, he may end up with a sort of a bit of a Jeffrey Epstein moment, I suspect.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll need to kind of keep an eye on things and see what happens and how it progresses. Now for the next story, across the water. The US reaches 500,000 COVID deaths. The United States yesterday crossed the staggering milestone of 500,000 COVID-19 deaths in just over a year since the coronavirus pandemic claimed its first known victim in the Santa Clara County of California. In a proclamation honouring the death, the President Joe Biden ordered the US flag to be flown at half-staff on public buildings and grounds until sunset on Friday. On this solemn occasion, we reflect on their loss and their loved ones left behind, Biden said at the proclamation. We as a nation must remember them so we can begin to heal, to unite, and find purpose as one nation to defeat this pandemic. Bells tolled on the National Cathedral in Washington to honour the lives lost, ringing 500 times to symbolise the 500,000 deaths. That's obviously a kind of symbolic gesture to the families and things, and which is maybe comforting, but the US has had its problems in dealing with the pandemic. What do you see in the future of the US in terms of dealing with COVID? Because up until now it's been a bit of a turmoil, hasn't it, under the previous administration?
I think that now they have a grown-up in charge, they have more of a chance of being able to tackle it. I think that while we're looking at these horrible, horrible figures, it shouldn't be lost on us that America's figures per head of population deaths is lower than the UK's. And the UK's numbers, those numbers are not proportionate across the different nations within the UK. England's death rate in particular is pretty horrific. I mean, I think England's death rate on its own is the highest per head of population in the world. So America, yes, to look at that figure, it is horrific. It truly is. And in a nation where people really struggle to get healthcare and really struggle to have adequate housing. And look at what's happening in Texas at the moment with the awful natural disasters that are happening. So America has many issues. Finally, they may be able to start addressing it. Dr. Fauci looked like a man unburdened when he, the day after Biden took office, and he finally is being listened. And it was actually really interesting watching a video clip of Fauci explaining the way in which the coronavirus vaccine worked, the way in which it sort of connected onto the mechanism by which the coronavirus vaccine worked. And what was really refreshing was to see the President Biden understanding the words that were being said to him and actually asking intelligent questions. There was no talk of injecting bleach. There was just science. And it's science and social responsibility that's going to get us through this.
Right, now to move on to the next story. The Earl of Strathmore jailed for sexually assaulting a woman at Glamis Castle. A relative of the Queen has been jailed for 10 months for sexually assaulting a woman at his ancestral home. Simon Bowes-Lyon, 34, the Earl of Strathmore, pleaded guilty to attacking a woman at Glamis Castle in Angus, Scotland in February last year. Bowes-Lyon, who's the son of a cousin of the Queen, was sentenced at Dundee Sheriff Court on Tuesday. The court had previously heard the assault happened in a bedroom at the castle. The court heard the woman was attending a 3-day public relations event at the castle and had gone to bed when drunk. Bowes-Lyon went into her room around 1:20 a.m, persuaded her to open the door and forced his way in before pushing her on the bed and assaulting her. The victim said the attack and Bowes-Lyon refusing to leave lasted 20 minutes. His victim locked the bedroom door and wedged a chair under the handle to prevent him getting back in, and was upset and afraid and left shaking. Sheriff Alistair Carmichael told Bowes-Lyon that throughout all of this she made it clear that she wanted you to stop. Once she finally managed to eject you from her bedroom, you returned to the door and pleaded with her to let you back in. Carmichael told Bowes-Lyon a lesser sentence than imprisonment, such as a community payback order or home curfew, was not appropriate. He said in particular they would not address the gravity of this crime, they would not provide an adequate level of punishment, they would not adequately express society's disapproval of such conduct, and they would not adequately deter others who may be tempted to behave in a similar way. Ruth, reading that is just absolutely shocking. I mean, 10 months for somebody who has went and put a woman through that, who's going to be living that and going through counselling for a long time. What's your take on this? It's 10 months.
Well,
is not a long time.
No, it was interesting because I just live 6 miles away from the castle, so the area is very well known to me. The Earl is not a particularly popular gentleman in the area for a number of reasons, among many, partly because he's a deeply unpleasant human being, from what I can gather, and this evidences that opinion. A minor. I mean, I know that you were reading the script, but just to make it clear, the victim was not drunk. It was Bowes-Lyon that was drunk. Bowes-Lyon was drunk and aggressive and sexually aggressive towards her. And 10 months for somebody who is still traumatized and had a very clear and articulate expression of the distress that the incident had caused her. 10 months is nothing, is it? But and it was interesting. My son was watching the news and he went, 10 months, that's nothing. And I went, but just, how many people that get caught for things like that and worse get less? Or the amount of rape convictions and sexual assault convictions are really low because people are often very loath to bring them. It's absolutely right that the judicial process be clear and be thorough, and decisions are what they are, and have to be evidence based. 10 months, 10 months. That's it. 10 months, and just, I mean, the thing is, often with these things, they tend to be generational. So men often have been, and it usually is men that are the perpetrators, and it's often that they're perpetrators to women and to children. And I'm not implying in any way that Bose Lyon was a perpetrator of offences against children. I'm speaking generally. These things tend to be generational, and the effects that are felt on women and on society carry on through generations. And we have to find a way to break the chain. And I hope that while Bose Lyon is in prison, no doubt mortified and horrified and all the other things that he will be feeling right now, I hope that in some way he gets an opportunity to perhaps address some of the issues that are going on with him. I suspect he won't. I suspect that, so he may not even realize really what it was he did wrong. It just, maybe he thought it was a bad date. It just, what, how, but you see it, and I just, it horrifies me to see how often it is that attitudes towards women they go on, don't they? It seems to be never ending. And 100 years ago, would this even have got anywhere? Probably not. I know a family, one of the small communities I lived in the islands many years ago. The son tried to rape, I think it was the mother or the wife of one of the neighbours, and the family remonstrated and said they were going to call the police. And the father came over and offered £25 to see if that would make the problem go away. And so I guess we've come further than that, because I suppose 20 years ago, 30 years ago, Bose Lyon wouldn't have even ended up in court, far less prison. So maybe we're making progress. But violence against women and children, it's such a problem. And we really need to name the beast to be able to deal with it.
Yeah. And the thing is, as you say, I mean, we are moving forward, but we just don't seem to be moving forward quickly enough, because there is certainly still an attitude there from a lot of men regarding women, which is inappropriate. And in this day and age, we should really be further on than what we really are. So it just shows you that it's still an underlying problem in society. But hopefully one day we will get there and the attitude towards women will change. Now, for the last story of the evening, Facebook is to restore Australian news pages. Facebook will restore Australian news pages ending in an unprecedented week-long blackout after wringing concessions from the government over a proposed law that will require tech giants to pay traditional media companies for their content. Both sides claimed victory in the clash, which has drawn global attention as countries including Canada and the UK consider similar steps to rein in the dominant tech platforms and preserve media diversity. While some analysis said Facebook has defended its lucrative model of collecting ad money for clicks on news, it shows others said the compromise, which includes a deal on how to resolve disputes, could pay off for the media industry, or at least for publishers with reach and political clout. Australia and the social media group has been locked in a standoff after the government introduced legislation that challenged Facebook and Google's dominance in the news content market. Ruth, I'm going to be honest here. I seen this on the news today, and it was the first I had known anything about it, because I have been kind of hiding from social media for about a week. I took a break, I took time out, and I was like, what's happening? So go on, you can fill us in, because I'm sure you know all about it.
Wouldn't presume to say I know all about it, but I watch far too much in the way of news programs, and I'm on social media far too much. Social media has been a bin fire, so I every now and then think I should come off it, but then so much is happening I kind of can't. I actually on a small personal note, I actually have been personally affected by this because I got a very nice message from a very nice woman in Australia who said she couldn't access the Keep Scotland the Brand page on Facebook because it had been shut down by Facebook as part of their news ban. So I was very pleased in some ways to think that the content of the Keep Scotland the Brand page was such that Facebook would consider it to be a news delivery system. So I was quite pleased that I was getting that side of things right. But in terms of what Facebook is up to, it's really dangerous. It's really dangerous. For anybody who hasn't yet watched it, I urge you to watch The Great Hack on Netflix. It's about the work of Cambridge Analytica, and it's about what Facebook and others get up to. And if you haven't seen it, you have to watch it. The Great Hack on Netflix. Go and watch it. Your mind will be blown. You will look at social media in a completely new way, I hope. Facebook itself, I think, is panicking because the world has decided that Facebook is too big and it's too powerful and it's too dirty. And actually, The Great Hack on Netflix that exposes a lot of what Zuckerberg and his ilk are up to. And it's really dodgy and it's really dangerous, and they're affecting governments. They've significantly, whether intentionally or not, I'll give them that. Yeah. For legal reasons, whether intentionally or not, they have enabled and facilitated pretty much right-wing madness and political intrigue and political a surge in political weight, and Facebook has been really behind a lot of it in cahoots with Cambridge Analytica, who incidentally were very much behind the Brexit and the Brexit vote, and have a significant influence still within Boris Johnson's Conservative Party. So these things are all intertwined, but basically, I think that Facebook is panicking because Joe Biden and the FBI and others have been very, very concerned for a long time about Facebook. And there's a lot of talk about splitting it up and basically sort of like some kind of monopolies commission kind of idea, making it become more of a news organization that needs to be monitored and covered. And I suspect that in a lot of ways the world will have to come together and come up with codes of conduct and look at social media and ways of making sure that it has ethical responses and better ways of dealing with the appalling threats and violence and racism and misogyny and all the other ghastliness that goes on, the horrific sectarian and homophobic rants that you see on social media. It's not okay. There have to be standards. However, you then look at Ofcom in this country and see that Paul Dacre's been put in charge. Paul Dacre, who is basically a neo-fascist, and you see that actually you can end up with toothless lions. But I think that Australia has taken the Facebook bull not so much by the horns, but perhaps by the ghoulies, and given it a bit of a squeeze, and we'll see what happens next.
It'll be certainly interesting to watch what happens next. Thank you, Ruth. Right, that's us for tonight, and thank you for joining us here at Scotland at 7 in Broadcasting Scotland. And it's been a pleasure, as always, to have a blather with Ruth Watson, and I hope Ruth will be back again soon. And once again, thank you to you for watching, and as ever, we're always crying out for support, whether it's coming here, or I'm saying not to my house, but to the studio, for to help out and volunteer. You are more than welcome, and as you can see, you can still do things from home as well, but we are needing a lot more help. The other thing we need is some financial help as well. So we are always looking for donations, we are looking for support, so we can also, as well as having the volunteers, be able to employ staff, which is very important, because that's one of the goals of Broadcasting Scotland, to be able to start employing staff. So what you can do is you can go on to the website, and there's the details there, as you can see, which is www.scotland www.broadcastingscotland.scot, and you can see all the ways you can support us. Another way you can support us is by sharing our shows and helping us out that way. So once again, thank you very much, and thank you for Ruth. And tomorrow night you'll be joined once again by Gordon, and have a lovely and pleasant evening. Thank you.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes,
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. Please support us if you can afford it.